Good morning, everyone. If we could begin to take our seats, we're about ready to begin the panel. My name is Ivan Penn. I am the energy correspondent for the New York Times based in Los Angeles. And we want to say thank you to Tawny and her panel for setting the stage for this discussion. In this panel, we will explore the topic of energy reliability. As California moves towards a clean energy future, how can we ensure dependability? What is the balance of renewable and traditional resources required to meet growing needs? I'm excited to be joined today by 4 distinguished panelists. I'll give brief introductions, but as with the previous panel, please note more information can be found on the PPIC website. So first, right next to me is Kate Gordon. She is the CEO of California Forward, a statewide organization dedicated to a more sustainable, resilient, and inclusive economy across every region of the state. She has spent the past 2 decades working at the intersection of climate change, energy policy, and equitable economic development. Most recently, she served as senior advisor to U.S. Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm. She earned a JD and a master's degree in city and regional planning from the University of California, Berkeley, and an undergraduate degree from Wesleyan University. And we have Rod Robinson. He is the vice president for electric systems operations at Pacific Gas and Electric Company, bringing decades of leadership and operational expertise to his role. A U.S. Air Force veteran, he launched his energy career at PG&E in 2002 before advancing through key leadership positions at CalISO and PG&E, where he has been instrumental in strengthening grid reliability and emergency preparedness. He holds an AS in electronics technology from the Community College of the Air Force, a BA in business management from the University of Phoenix, and an MBA from St. Mary's College. And we also have Andy Walls. He is the president of downstream, midstream, and chemicals for Chevron. He is responsible for Chevron's worldwide manufacturing, marketing, lubricants, chemicals, and additives businesses, along with Chevron's shipping, pipeline, power, and trading units. Previously, he served as the president of International Products, responsible for Chevron's downstream fuels, transportation fuels, key distribution areas, fuels business and joint ventures outside of the Americas, He oversaw the refining and marketing of transportation fuels, key distributive areas in Southeast Asia and South Africa, as well as Chevron's joint venture aviation activities in the Middle East. He earned a bachelor's degree in civil engineering at Colorado State University. And finally, we have Pete Weber. He is a former Fortune 500 executive who has been at the helm of some of the world's leading technology, manufacturing, and agricultural science companies. He served as vice president of FMC Corporation, CEO of Technology Inc., and CEO of Riverbend International. In 2010, he launched the Fresno Bridge Academy, a program designed to bring Fresno's poorest residents into the economic mainstream. The project has expanded into other counties as the California Bridge Academies. He currently serves as a senior advisor to the New California Coalition and the Stanford Lab for Deliberative Democracy. He has a BA in Industrial Engineering from the University of California, Berkeley, and is a graduate of the executive program at Stanford University Business School. Thanks to each of you for joining us today. If we can give them a warm welcome. Now, my first question to our panel is, how do we ensure that the lights stay on in our homes and businesses, and that we are able to get to and from work and school, given a few different concerns? One, when California consumers have already faced unprecedented use of tools like public safety power shutoffs in recent years, threats of rolling blackouts during extreme summer heat, an aging electric grid that is increasingly under strain. There are lingering concerns about electric vehicle range anxiety and the need for chargers. And how do we manage the potential exponential growth in electricity demand that is on the horizon from data centers driven by the need to support artificial intelligence? And I'm going to first put Rod on the hot seat as an executive with
the guy who keeps the lights
on.
So thanks, Ivan. Other panelists, thanks for having me here today. Reliability. It is something that is evolving every day for us. You know, you look at some of the challenges that we had 10, 15 years ago, it was stagnant, slow moving. There wasn't a lot of change in the industry. We had a lot of fossil generation. The load growth wasn't as significant as it is right now. But what is happening and the way things have changed, you think about climate. You know, he mentioned PSPS and all those things that we put in place just to manage that exponential change in fire risk for California. What I talk to my team about every day and other executives across the country is we have to be more collaborative than we've ever been before in this industry. We have to be willing to go outside of the industry and look at the way in which others are doing things to be successful. But ultimately, it comes down to how do we prioritize those things that are most important for us? Reliability, wildfire mitigation, compliance, affordability, those are all the things that we hear every day. So keeping the lights on, you know, being the vice president of electric system operations, I have a team that's working 24/7 to make sure that we keep power flowing in and out of California in a reliable manner, meeting all of those requirements that we have, whether it's from our regulators, legislators, everyone that is involved in the process. And we know how disruptive it is when someone loses their power. And also from an affordability perspective, we know that we have to be better than we've ever been before with innovation, with waste elimination, and other things that could lead to us being better than we were in that space. But reliability comes down to generation and load balance. And what are those generation resources that are most critical, especially at this evolving, changing time for us? You know, Diablo Canyon Power Plant, our hydro resources, they are so critical right now because of the inertia, and I would just say the stability that they provide when there are issues that show up on the grid. They are the most stable. We know there's variability in some of the renewable resources that we see, solar, wind. That's why battery storage is so critical to the future. And you can think back to 3, 4, 5 years ago when we were having many more capacity events with the ISO, and we were transitioning at that time from more fossil to renewable. And the amount of renewables that we have online today is significant. And that's why, you know, over the last couple of years, think about last July in California, how hot it was, no capacity events. We basically rode through that because of how much renewable battery storage, the ramp rates that they could serve to deal with the changes that were happening on the grid and the amount of load that we saw. We have capacity in our system that we can utilize to serve some of these new technologies that are coming online. That partnership that we have to have with them in order to make sure that we are allowing them to actually connect in those areas is extremely important until we can build a pathway to those other locations and build, whether it's additional renewable resources, renewable natural gas plants, any of those things that are going to help facilitate some of the additional load that we're going to see. But I just end with, this is an exciting time for California because we get to model what this looks like for the rest of not just the country, but the world. We're transitioning to a new normal because we need to, we want to, we have to, and it is pushing us to be more collaborative. So the thing that I say to everyone is, we have to actually be more collaborative, transparent, open with each other so that we can solution together, because if siloed utility operations is a thing of the past, we all need to understand what are those challenges that we're having in different areas of the country. You think about wildfire mitigation and what we've seen and done. Now everyone is coming to us and asking us, how do you do PSPS? What does that really mean? We had the largest PSPS event in history in 2019. So you think about how huge that was. And now with advances in technology, the way in which we've configured our system, the other covered conductor, underground, all of those things have made it such that PSPS is not as impactful, and we'll continue to push the envelope as far as what is possible and how do we mitigate some of the challenges of the future to make sure that we're better and we're modeling what everyone else needs to do.
Rob, one quick follow-up. So many states are saying, especially with that AI development, that they can't, the states, utilities, they can't do it without natural gas. How do you see that from a PG&E standpoint, especially given California's continued effort to push for clean energy?
I would say that we need to just push others to get outside of their comfort zone. I think there's a comfort to natural gas that others have, and they know that, hey, from a technology perspective, from a comfort perspective, if we say natural gas, we know that that's going to be there. But the technology associated with the transformation to solar power, battery storage, grid forming versus grid following, and also other RAS schemes and other things. Those are remedial action schemes that take action based on a certain predefined set of conditions. All of those things are going to be part of the holistic approach to managing this as we evolve to meet those requirements that we've set for ourselves. I would say yes, renewable natural gas will have a role, but for us to be who we really need to be and strive to be, we have to continue to push and not just allow ourselves to be comfortable with things that worked in the past and not push ourselves to push on the technology of the future to solve the issue that we want to solve.
Well, so speaking of fossil fuels, Secretary Garcia mentioned the benefits of cap and trade, or she said cap and invest. Our focus in the state on moving away from fossil fuels has created challenges for companies like yours, Chevron. How are you seeing the reliability issue related to transportation as we push for more electrification of vehicles, but also given that the vast majority of vehicles still on the road are internal combustion engines?
Well, thank you. Thrilled to be here. I wish we were having this conversation 5 years ago. And I also don't think we have enough time to talk about this. I'm quite worried. If you get nothing else from me, I think you're already in an energy crisis. I am very worried about California's energy, and Chevron and our competitors, the world's changing fast. Our industry's been basically, I don't think California wants refineries, and that's okay if that's what California wants, but they're going fast. And they're going fast because California is not open for business. The state is uninvestable for a company like Chevron. Our competitors are leaving. And I think it's a crisis. It is very difficult for us to want to invest in the state of California. And you're not ready for a world without fossil fuels. You're not. Okay, it's still 80% of the energy in California. And we're just not able to compete and win here. And so companies like Valero and P66 and Exxon and Shell and many companies many times before us have all left. And I hope you realize this is a crisis. We can't even get to the resources in California that sit in the San Joaquin Valley. We can't get permits to drill for that product, to put it in our refineries, to supply you the fuels you need. Yeah, I'm okay with electric vehicles. I'm okay with an energy transition. But we're going to head into a crisis. And the reason I took this panel is because reliability is going to matter. And price, I don't care about price. Price isn't a big deal. But if you can't get the products you need because it's not available, that becomes a crisis. And I'm worried that we're not talking about this. There's been a little bit of a change in the legislature recently, a little bit. It's been talk, but we need action. You need to have companies like Chevron staying in California, running our 2 big refineries, supplying you the products you need, and then as we transition, we'll go away. But it's happening already. People are leaving, and I think we're in a crisis mode. And I know that's not as positive as my friend here, but I'm quite concerned. We should have been having this conversation a long time ago, and I'm worried we're not even going to get to the real issues today in a short panel like this.
Well, the word crisis is one that I'm hearing not only from your position, but hearing it in all parts of the energy sector. There's broad concern about there being a crisis of both the reliability, of affordability, that we'll delve into more in the next panel. But Kate, you have not only on the state level, but on the national level, been looking at dealing with these issues of both reliability, clean energy. How do you see California being able to navigate the tensions that we just heard?
Yeah, I think it's a great set of issues you both just raised and the earlier panel raised, and just the word holistic I think is really important. It keeps coming up, and this is really the energy system we're trying to get to looks really different than the energy system we're moving from. We're going from a system that had primarily just a couple inputs into it, really petroleum, coal, and increasingly, and wood before that, right? I mean, very, very few inputs, and we're going to a system that's extremely diversified, which means that it has a whole bunch of different pieces and industries and technologies and land use changes and all kinds of things. At the same time, you already heard this earlier and again, but we're going from a conversation that really, I think, in the state of California and kind of everywhere, I mean, this is the conversation that's happened on climate action internationally too, through the UN, and in most countries, has been mostly about carbon emissions, right? It's been a conversation about what are our emissions goals and how are we getting to the goals? And you hear that over and over again, like where are we on the goals? But actually, this transition isn't just about carbon emissions. It's about geopolitics, because California is a very islanded fuel market, as you know well. So if we don't have in-state production, we're importing a lot more. What does that mean from a geopolitical perspective? It's a conversation about climate resilience in a big way, both because of reliability and because of cost. PG&E, I think 40% of your costs are wildfire mitigation and grid reliability and grid resilience at this point, something like that. That is a conversation we have to have that's about land use decision making. It's about where we put housing. It's about what kind of electricity system we use to serve that housing. It's about our CAL FIRE budget, right? I mean, there's just every piece of this, the AI piece of this is about not only the energy impact of AI, but AI as a major driver. The state's looking at it as a major economic driver for the state, especially with Hollywood going down in terms of its impact on the state, especially because tech has become less secure in terms of its economic impact, and we're looking to diversify our economy. So it's about all those things, right? And so I think the complication about this conversation is we've been looking at this as a very siloed climate issue with carbon emissions as the metric. It's actually a conversation that's about all of these other things, and we don't particularly in California have a system at the government level that does holistic decision making. We don't have a place where all of those trade-offs are in conversation simultaneously. We have a lot of different silos dealing with different pieces of it. And when I was in the government here at the Office of Planning and Research, we ended up seeing sort of reports coming out of different parts of the governor's office that literally contradicted each other in terms of the path forward on these issues. So we need to get to a place where we have a more comprehensive approach to the issue of what kind of economy do we want to have, how do we make sure it's reliable, how do we make sure that the costs are affordable, not only in terms of the cost on your bill or at the pump, but Californians' ability to afford is the other side of the affordability conversation. The PPIC polling that was just done, I thought one of the most interesting findings was that people are less confident that clean energy will create jobs than they were in 2010. I think that's because, and the last thing I'll say on this, we haven't really walked the walk all that effectively on what a California economy can look like that is reliable and does create opportunities and does create benefits. We've done a really good job on the very centralized question of building renewables through our existing utilities. Really good job. We're now in the world of the much more complicated individual consumers, individual drivers, individual decision makers, individual investors. And that requires, I just think, more consistency and comprehensive thinking from the state, and also comprehensive, and I'm sure Pete will talk about this, also recognition that how that plays out in different parts of the state looks really different. How the energy transition plays out in Kern County and Contra Costa County, both very dependent on fossil fuels for their economies, looks really different than how it plays out in San Francisco.
Well, and you're touching on a question that I want to get back to in just a moment about obstacles. But before we do, I want to bring Pete into this conversation, especially as you've had a variety of different roles, both corporate, but on the community level. What are you seeing in terms of the needs with reliability?
Yeah, thank you, Ivan, for that question. And first, let me thank Tanny for hosting this very important conversation. In fact, it's a conversation that I think I agree with Alex that it's a long overdue conversation. And before I come back directly to your question, Ivan, I want to refer the audience to a couple of documents that I hope will inform your views of this important subject. One of them is a document that my friend Kate Gordon just recently put out, she and her friends at California Forward, in which Kate, who is one of the early architects of current policy, is saying this is now a moment where we have to look at a fundamental shift in how we're addressing climate policy and energy. And I completely agree with that. The second document that I want to refer you to is the report on a deliberative poll that I happened to co-lead with the Professor Jim Fishkin at Stanford in 2021 as I'm a senior advisor to the Stanford Center for Deliberative Democracy. This was a poll, the largest deliberative poll ever done in the world. It was a nationwide poll. We oversampled Texas and California in order to compare how people felt about climate change and energy in the biggest red state and the biggest blue state. The project manager, by the way, is in the audience somewhere back in here. I can't see her because of the lights. Sabri Valentine did a terrific job on that project. And I want to refer to that in part because of some of the comments that Mark Ballot made when he was talking in the first panel. And that is, by the way, there were 72 very substantive questions on climate change and policy, and energy policy, and I can't, cover all of that. So let me give you the top line. A supermajority of the poll participants from California and really across the nation, including Texas, felt that climate change was an important energy that required, attention from policymakers. Not a surprise. The second major takeaway was that an even larger supermajority said, but don't do anything that impacts my life or the life of my family in the here and now. Okay, see a few chuckles here, but that is a poll that is entirely consistent with the results that Mark Baldassare talked about in the PPIC poll that was just recently delivered. And it is totally understandable because while people are concerned about the future of California and the country and the planet, they are even more concerned about what's happening to them here in California today. In fact, I would take the liberty of defining their views as California has crushed the California dream. Okay, and not just in terms of affordability, as has been talked about already significantly, but also in terms of opportunity. We have been displacing productive economic activity from California to other states, and the results are that, I don't know if Sarah Bond is in the room, but PPIC recently released a report. We have the highest unemployment rate in the country. More than 1 million unemployed Californians. That's more than the total population. Men, women, children, and adults in 7 states in this country. That's a crisis. I mean, it's something that we need to pay attention to. We have a state in which, according to the California Poverty Measure developed by PPIC and Stanford, 35% of Californians are either poor or near poor. What are we doing? I mean, we have a state in which if you are under the age of, actually, if you're 35 or under, say 21 to 35, 15.5% of those people own their homes. That compares to about 40% in the 80s. And it compares to 36.3% nationally. What are we doing? So a lot of this is connected to the fact that we have just totally ignored the fact that energy has an impact on affordability and opportunity. And we've just totally ignored that for a very long period of time, and we can't afford to continue to do that. Specifically with regards to reliability, Californians are very pragmatic. They believe in an all-of-the-above approach. They believe very, very strongly that we should not be displacing current, affordable sources of energy before new sources can come on stream. As Alex said...
Andy, it's okay.
Andy, sorry. As Andy said, look, whatever happens. I mean, people like solar, provided that it doesn't infringe on natural habitat or on farmland, and provided that it's affordable. People like hydro. They like biomass. They like, it's all of the above. Nuclear, you might be surprised, as I was, to learn that even before deliberation, 57% of Californians supported new generation nuclear, small modular reactors. But that's a long-term play. I mean, it's going to take a while before we get to that. By the way, they also support carbon capture, use, and sequestration. But and Chevron is very involved in the latter. The fact is that we've got to look at all of these things. And to the question that you raised earlier, Ivan, about how does natural gas fit in? Well, natural gas today is the fastest, cheapest way to backfill as we try to get more and more renewables on stream. And so that's the direction of most Californians.
Well, so there are 2 things that were touched on, both Pete and Kate, that you all raised in terms of affordability and also needing to address the needs of those who are more disadvantaged. So I want to delve deeper going back to this obstacle question, and if we can be specific, what are the obstacles to us achieving both reliability and in ensuring that we're not leaving people behind as we try to keep those lights on, and also people, again, to get from work and to school? What are specific obstacles to achieving those things? Kate, I'm sorry. With you.
That's fine. There's a lot of thoughts, and from what folks have said, I'm going to say 3 obstacles, and then try to be a little forward thinking about them. And they're all a lot of my work in the last 20 years on this has been in the policy world, so they're a little policy driven. But one of them is that I think there's an obstacle in a way to overcome it, that we in the state, our kind of policy around climate and energy has focused more on goals than on implementation. You heard this on the last panel as well. So really overcoming that, and what that does is it puts us in the world of X% by Y date. It puts us in the world of 1.5 degrees. It puts us in the world of these charts that are like this, emissions have gone down this much while GDP has gone down this much, gone up this much. Underneath that, there's a lot of, to Pete's point and others, pain being felt by people on the ground. It's not really the lived experience of most people that they think about the emissions or state GDP. They really think about their own lives. So I think getting to more of an implementation place, which should include something that companies do when they set goals, which is setting benchmarks. And actually, somebody said this on the earlier panel, but like holding ourselves accountable to the benchmarks. Is the thing working? If not, let's look at it and figure out another path forward. I would say to the legislature, building in checkpoints into these goal setting exercises, into the cap and invest reauthorization to say, is it working? Are we getting there? And it's like, not just is it working on an emission standpoint, but is it working on a reliability standpoint? Is it working to keep the lights on? Number 2, quickly, I think we have an obstacle in that our policy tends to be very future focused and not present focused. When you do an energy transition, you're moving from something to something else. We're not starting with a blank page in California. We're starting with 11 million people living in the wildland-urban interface. We're starting with an existing system of oil and gas infrastructure. We're starting with an existing natural gas build-out. So how do we think in an innovative way, not just about like, what's the new shiny technology that's going to get us to the future, but how are we using existing infrastructure? How are we transitioning refineries to renewable fuels? How are we thinking about taking existing transmission lines and reconductoring them to be faster and more effective? How are we thinking about our existing industrial ports and using them to do offshore wind in the north, for instance? Like, what is the transition of the infrastructure? So we're not just telling people everything you have now is gone and we have this new shiny future. We're saying there is a path to getting there, and it includes working with folks that have been doing this forever, that know how to do electricity, that know how to do work at the ports, that know how to do carbon management, right? And then the third really quick thing, I would say, huge barrier in coordination. I said this already, but I'm going to say it again, at the state level. And just other states are better at this. Colorado has an energy transition office in the governor's office. Wyoming has an energy transition office. The state of New Mexico has an entire legislative council that focuses on this. Let's take a page from some of these other places and think about a more holistic, coordinated approach to this issue, because it does include a lot of elements that go beyond carbon regulation to a lot of other pieces of the system. So that was a lot, but those are my 3 big things.
No, so policies and looking at a lot of the things that we're doing and can innovate. Rod, of course, there have been the questions about permitting reform and the role of rooftop solar in a world where there's a greater emphasis on utility scale, whether it's solar or wind and batteries. What do you see as some of the obstacles from the utility corporate position to reliability, and what role can that consumer relationship play? We've had the changes in net energy metering that have frustrated some consumers, but Pete pointed out, people I want to make sure my lights stay on. What are the obstacles for the corporate utility, and what role can the consumer play in the now bi-directional relationship with their utility to help with this reliability question?
Wow, that's a very good, in-depth question that's probably going to get me in trouble. But when you sit back and you think about, you know, how this industry has been required to change and evolve so quickly, you know, that is one of the challenges that the industry has right now. Rate and speed of change, and everyone that is a part of that process being able to change and also see the future. Kate talked about it. You know, we have goals and we'll say by this date we need to do X. And then PG&E execute. Okay, so we have to develop a plan, talk to our regulators, legislators, governor's office. We have to talk to everyone about, okay, this is what it's going to take in order to accomplish this. So I always go back to that holistic approach, that partnership that is required, because no one individual organization is going to be able to transition to where we're trying to go. It has to be a holistic approach. Our executive team, our government relations team, our operations team, everyone has to be on the same page, working together. And it's not just internal to California anymore. We have to look at what's happening. She talked about it. Energy Transition Office in this state, in the governor's office, in other places. What is happening in Virginia? They have a lot of data centers and they're having challenges, and we're having communications with them so that we can not go through some of the same challenges that they have. But we have to have a plan that's prioritized, that is versatile, to be able to change and evolve based on the growing demands and changes that we're seeing here in California. And I feel the momentum in that space taking place, but it needs to be elevated and also put on, I would just say, and sped up so that the things that we're trying to accomplish are more accomplishable. And we need to have the real conversation of, this is where we are. We need to make an adjustment based on where we are and what it's going to take to get to where we're trying to get, and just be open and transparent about that.
But elevated how? What does that look like?
Elevation means more communications about what's really truly required for us to be successful. What is that hindrance? Is there a policy that prevents us from being able to get permits to do the things that we need to do? Is there a policy that restricts our ability to interconnect, whether it's generation or other facilities, to our facility? Is there a policy that restricts regional generation from being a part of the whole Western, not just California, but Western interconnection, so that we can leverage each other to be successful with this transition plan? So it's, what is the holistic approach? Who should be included in that? And we need to start those communications now. Some have started, but we need to elevate that and make sure that everyone who has a role to play has a voice, and so we can show them how your responsibilities, your authority, your accountability, those things that you're responsible for will lead to where we're trying to be, and no one feels left behind. And it won't slow down the process, because if there are enough players who don't feel like they're a part of the process or don't even understand how they fit into tomorrow, because I think that's a big part of the problem. 10 years from now, there are a lot of people organizations that wonder, where am I going to be? How am I going to fit in? I tell my team, we enable the success of California by making sure that we're doing all we can to keep the grid reliable, safe, and affordable. That's what we're doing, that's our mandate, and that's what we're striving towards. But we can't do that by ourselves. It requires everybody.
Andy, transportation, obstacles.
I think your question maybe was what should the state do, or what actions could we take, or what things could change?
And the obstacles in achieving those things, and how do we overcome them?
Well,
And you got a couple.
I don't have
minutes.
enough time to tell you the things we should try to, that we're going to have to change, but there's too much, I don't know what this new office would be, but we don't need more regulation. We don't need more bureaucrats. We don't need more agencies that we have to deal with. We can't get anything done today. The taxes on the California taxes on a gallon of gasoline are $1.30 a gallon more than anywhere else. And where's that money going? Why isn't that money going to something that's helping improve the state? If you don't have a refinery, you're going to get your stuff from, the product's going to come in from Korea or China. That's where the gasoline's going to come from. That's not lower carbon. That is not less carbon intensity. They're putting that on ships and they're running it over here to the US, and they're going to make sure they get a premium for that product. I am very concerned about the direction we're going. There's too much regulation. There's too many agencies we have to deal with. There's too many rules. They're all stricter than anywhere in the world. I like that it's clean. I like we've made great progress on smog. But we're not going to be around if we don't get some ability to invest in the state and get a return on that investment. I run a global business. I have options. I spent all day yesterday at the Richmond refinery. 1,000 employees there. They've all got great jobs, and they're worried. I'm worried. I know that. Look, we're okay with the transition. I'm okay with that, but I don't think we're getting there in the right way. And I'm afraid there's a train wreck coming. I'm afraid there's a train wreck. I see the vice chairman here, and he's working extremely hard to keep the refineries from closing. And I hope if you get nothing else from me, I think we need action now. The legislature has to do something now, and they have to do something more in the next term, and they have to do something more in the next term, because you're gonna need Chevron. We've been here 140 years. We'll go away when it's time, but it's not time. You're not ready. And we supply 60% of the jet fuel to San Francisco. There is no low carbon solution for jet fuel that isn't twice the price. You can put sustainable aviation fuel in it, but it's twice the price, and nobody will pay for it. Your survey was great, but it didn't ask people what they were afford to pay for the lower carbon solutions. And I'm just afraid they're not going to be able to pay. And if you don't have refineries and the world changes, California's going to be in big trouble.
Pete, I'm going to give you the last word on this segment before we turn to our audience.
Yeah, sure, Ivan. And Ivan, I shared with you that I was concerned that, not concerned, but certainly I think this audience is going to come away with a better understanding of the problem than when we walked in. But I'm not sure that we've talked enough about the solutions. What's the path forward? People have touched on some of the obstacles. We're too siloed. We haven't looked at this thing holistically. I've had focus groups. I've led focus group discussions with people about the subject of climate change and energy. And I've tested out the idea that we ought to have co-equal goals. Those co-equal goals being, on the one hand, sustainability and resiliency, and on the other hand, affordability, reliability, and opportunity, okay? And people tend to be pretty receptive to that idea, but they do push back. And they push back by saying, but for at least a few years, we need to emphasize the second of those goals to make up for the fact that we overemphasized the first goal for so many years. I mean, let me give you some perspective on that. Ross Brown said during the first panel that California emits less than 1% of GHG in the world. If you look back at 2010, we were emitting 0.9% of global GHG. 15 years later, we're emitting 0.74% of global GHG. That 0.16 reduction in California's contribution to GHG has come at extraordinary cost to our society. Again, in terms of not just affordability and reliability, but also opportunity. And so, in my judgment, what we need to do is have a conversation in which, and not a long extended conversation, doesn't need to be a long extended conversation, but one in which we define those co-equal goals. Again, sustainability, resilience, affordability, reliability, and opportunity. And we define goals for all of those. And we advance in the direction of trying to achieve them, and we have year-by-year metrics on how we're doing. Not just to be ideologically driven towards, frankly, being able to pound our chest to say we have reduced our carbon footprint. To what effect? We've reduced our carbon footprint at the same time that we have contributed to higher global GHG because we've displaced productive activity to other states and nations that have lower standards than our own.
Can I say something super quick on that? I'm sorry.
Well, let's bring in the audience, and I'm sure they'll present a question that'll give you an opportunity to do that. So we'd like to do that now. Now we're going to turn to the audience for this Q&A portion, and a reminder for those here in Sacramento, raise your hand, and the PPIC staff will come to you with the microphone. Do state your name and organization before asking your question. And for those of you joining us virtually, please send an email to ppiceventquestions@gmail.com. Be sure to include your name and organization along with your question. PPIC staff will be monitoring the questions that come in. And so there are a number of hands. Folks are ready to jump in here. Let's start with the student tape.
Hello, my name is Josiah D'Angelo Lathers. I come from New Tech High School and College. My question is, I appreciate how you guys help California with their tech and making sure we are a healthy state. However, my real question is how California isn't really known as the most polluted state or not the most clean. We're actually pretty clean for being a United States. Texas and Nevada are known for being polluted states. So if we were 100% clean, we would have took a cup out of the local ocean. That's how little we would have actually changed the polluted state of the world. And by 2050, it's already over by the rate we're going. If we completely change everything in California currently, we're doing nothing still. And even if you guys help your rate, we'll still be doing nothing in the polluted area. So how would you guys fix this? Because we already know Texas isn't going to say, yeah, we agree with you too. We know that Nevada isn't going to agree with us either. So, and also investors. Some investors won't come to you, will also come to you, but also come to get fossil fuels like Bank of America. Bank of America has been investing in this corporation today. If we look at who have donated and invested in you, it was Bank of America. However, with fossil fuels, Bank of America invested in them too, over $1 billion. So how do we know that you're more trustworthy than fossil fuels who are getting invested by the same exact people?
I can do thank you for the question, and it kind of goes to what I was thinking after Pete talked too, which is why California matters, which I think is part of the question, and it's a really important question and thing to talk about for us in California. And to Pete's point, yes, all those numbers are true on GHG emissions, but GHG emissions, number one, some of it's carbon and it immediately leaves the local atmosphere and goes global, but some of it's very local. So GHG emissions also have local pollution impacts that matter a lot to the places in which they're happening, and I think that is part of this conversation. The other thing is that California has had is massively over-indexed for clean energy patents. We have most of the clean energy patents in the world, and a lot of that has driven the tech sector, and a lot of that drives the state budget. The reason that we do so well off of those tech patents is that we have a lot of innovation here, and that is a very outsized contribution to our state budget. So it matters beyond just the GHG numbers, this whole question, and California matters beyond our contribution to global emissions. We have done a lot of the innovation in this space. We have modeled some of the early ideas of how to move forward. I think what I'm saying and others are saying is we have to now model how to build an economy that is simultaneously sustainable and resilient and works for people on the ground. California needs to model that economy. We're the 4th largest economy in the world. We have all of these stated goals. We have to be able to show that it's possible. And I really do believe that if we do that, we become a model for the rest of the world. I really do. We become a model for the types of investments people are making. We become a model for the type of transition infrastructure ideas. So we do matter beyond our size and beyond our emissions contributions globally. But it also puts an extra responsibility on us to show that we can do it.
Thank you for your question. We're going to turn to someone who is watching us.
Right, question from our online audience. What role can nuclear play in California's clean energy goals and in ensuring reliability? And relatedly, what's your perspective on small modular reactors adoption in California? Pete mentioned this earlier. Companies which are making them say they're safer and require less land and resources and should be approved for use faster.
Rod.
Pete?
So, yeah, everyone knows we have Diablo Canyon, which is a big provider of energy right in the middle of our service territory. And it is one of the cleanest, most stable. It is something that for other events across the interconnection, it is that stabilizing force that basically supports the larger interconnection. It is very critical to the success of our interconnection and PG&E. Also, our hydro fleet is something else that is pretty substantial and also helps support, those times when we have elevated loads or other events that happen not just in California but outside of California. From a nuclear perspective, small modular reactors, that is something that is definitely a topic that needs to be discussed more. It's not a real quick solution fix, but it is something that is growing as it relates to its potential to help solve some of the issues that are taking place, not just here in California, but across the country. So we're definitely looking at that to see what is that role for us moving forward? What is California looking at in its ability to adopt something in that area? And we'll be ready, and we're watching others in other parts of the country as they're going through that process to try to start the utilization of SMRs.
Hey, Ivan, maybe just quickly, I don't want to get to more questions. So I think we need every form of energy, every single form. Not once has the only form of energy that's gone down over time is sperm oil. Everything else has gone up. Coal, natural gas, oil and gas, everything's gone up. Wood. We need every form, including nuclear. And it's a great solution. So you probably want to talk about it. You probably know more about it than I do.
Well, yeah, just very briefly, I made reference to the fact that Californians really strongly support new generation nuclear. Modular reactors, small modular reactors that are very safe. If we, California, just again talking about the co-equal goals that I referred to earlier, if we want to participate in the reshoring of manufacturing that is going to be taking place, if we're going to participate in the AI revolution, if we're going to renew our participation in the semiconductor industry, nuclear is indispensable. Now, even if there was the political will in California to do small nuclear reactors today, we won't get there for at least 5 to 7 years. And given that it's California, and given what Andy said about how long it takes to get things done in California, maybe 10 years. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be going after NuScale and GE, Hitachi, and Westinghouse and saying, come manufacture small modular reactors in California. That'll help, one of our goals of, creating jobs and so on, but also it will help pave the way for how we come out of this with a better solution than we have today.
That's also another plug for the regional grid point, right? Because, the first investment we made at DOE in small modular reactors was in Wyoming, which is on our regional grid. So think about other places too.
Well, and in addition to Diablo Canyon, many people may not know that California utilities also own part of Palos Verdes, and that's outside of the state, but that's a huge contributor to the state. That Western grid question, 'cause we're just about out of time, but Rod, Western grid would help, hurt? How given that on the East Coast you have governors in the largest electricity market, PJM, some are threatening to get out of a regional transmission organization. California is contemplating creating one. Help or hurt?
Yeah, I am a proponent and a full supporter of a regional market. Being at the ISO, seeing what the ISO market did to increase the pool of resources that were available not only to California, but the rest of the Western interconnection. So when we're having, just think about 2020 to 2023, 24, when we were having some of the capacity issues as we were transitioning from some of the fossil issues to, from fossil plants to, and then starting our transition into renewables, we relied on them pretty heavily to import energy into California. So as we expand and we transition, everyone else is transitioning too in the Western interconnection. It's not just California. They might not be doing it at the scale that we're pushing on, but they're transitioning as well. I think about 10 years ago, we were a net importer of energy here in California. Now I look at the flows on our interconnection lines and we're exporting most of the time, helping the rest of the Western interconnection because of our energy transition and the way things are happening here in California. So being able to help support the rest of the Western interconnection, and also as we continue to transition and this energy ecosystem changes and evolve, we could be utilizing them to help us with some of the things that we have in our fleet or some of the things that we're transitioning to as it relates to artificial intelligence, data center, beneficial load. So I just think the regional market and the ecosystem of sharing resources across the Western interconnection is a positive for all. Not to say that it's without any issues, but there is definitely a need from my perspective to do that, and especially as we're transitioning.
We have time for one last question very quickly.
Hi, John Kennedy with the Rural County Representatives of California. Appreciate the opportunity to ask a question. Energy is absolutely vital for local economies, economic development, the provision of essential services, schools, health, so many things. So appreciate the discussion about grid reliability in general. I'm hoping to take it a little more granular because we appreciate, and I think this is for PG&E, but others, we appreciate all the efforts of wildfire risk reduction. We can't have mega fires in the future. So appreciate all of your investments, all of your strategies on ways to reduce wildfires, especially in a lot of our communities. At the same time, we appreciate how you're reducing the scope, duration, intensity of PSPS outages that have a profound impact on entire regions. The trade-off is we're seeing a lot more frequent outages, a couple thousand a year in some rural communities. These are multi-hour outages that are having a debilitating impact. Sometimes we have some customers who have 7 to 9 outages in a given calendar month. So appreciate the trade-offs between wildfire risk, affordability, reliability. What does the future look like for those Californians, for those to prevent, a two-California system? What investments need to be made? What does life look like for you in the energy sector to make sure that we have reliability not only in the grid scale, but also for individual customers?
Rod, can you give a 30-second answer?
30-second answer. I think that data centers and beneficial load growth are actually coming to California at the right time. We're talking about how do we upgrade our system, how do we do that without impacting our customers more negatively and adding additional costs to them. Affordability, we know, is a big issue moving forward, and utilizing and getting those data centers on board with our current infrastructure so that we can continue to build and develop our system to support those, but not only those data centers, but also those customers. So the amount of work that is happening on a daily basis for wildfire mitigation is for reliability. And that continuation to fight wildfire mitigation, to add those data centers, and to also evaluate where are those areas, as you mentioned, that are having more impact from an outage perspective so that we can make the necessary upgrades in those areas so that their experience is improved over the long haul is definitely something that we're aspiring to and something that will get done.
Well, we would like to get more granular, but that's our time. So we have reached the end of our panel, and I would like to thank Kate Gordon and Rod Robinson, Andy Walls, and Pete Weber for participating in our discussion. We will now take a 30-minute lunch break, and the program will resume at 12 p.m. for a conversation on energy affordability, moderated by Laura Clivens of KQED. We hope that you will stick around as we delve a little bit further into these issues. Can we please give a hand to our panelists?